Hey, out there, have you ever felt like you could learn a complex concept with a bunch of moving parts if somebody could just explain the basic mechanism, something easy? Doesn't have to be the most technical way to understand it, but a way to put everything in a quick visual framework. So let's do that today with a concept a lot of people, beginners, are having a struggle with, and that's the concept of resolve, especially if you've just learned the 5 to 1. And then you're hearing stuff about a backdoor dominant, but then there's a tritone substitute. Oh, yeah, you learned that the other day. But then someone talked about secondary dominant, that one guy with a popular channel, and yeah, secondary dominance. So you learn those, and now you're confused because is it the secondary or the tritone? How do you know? Well, let's find out where they all come from, or a way that at least links them all together in a real pretty easy concept here. And see if they get a little easier to handle, understand, and find in any key. With magic visualization, like we always get here on Mind's Eye Visual Guitar Methods, welcome to the channel. Thank you. If this is your first time, hit the notification, like, subscribe, all that stuff. All right, so to get into this and to make this not a super long lesson like I always do, let's understand this jazz grip right here. This first chord, basically what we're gonna talk about in this whole lesson is this G7 chord, because this dominant seventh chord, which means it needs a root, it needs a dominant, it needs a flatted seventh, but we'll go over that in a second. And we don't really need to know a bunch of theory for this lesson, really. Anyways, it's mostly just the visualization. So, um, anyways, G7 though, that's that seven chord. It's got that outlier in there, and that leads you to resolve to the seven. And beginners don't understand because it just they don't hear it yet in music. I know I was at this place where you kept on hearing that this 5 to 1, 5 to 1. It's everywhere in music, and you don't even really realize it until you get into everything and start studying, and you see how much okay this resolve is really what music is about. So learning some of these resolves plus the other ones, the tricky ones that take your music from everyday harmony that anybody almost can write to, hey, this guy's got some of those tricks. And let's get all of them in understood in one lesson here. So we got this jazz grip, right? So it's about G7 resolving to C major 7. So C major 7 in the blue here. So it's like, wow, that was really bad playing. And I'm just doing it's C major 7, but I'm just doing a triad there for just to make it everything really easy. So, anyways, you've heard about this tritone sub, backdoor dominant, secondary dominant. I just went over all that. So let's talk about this grip really quick here. I went past this page a little bit. What are we even talking about here? This grip is here. You find your root here on the low E string, and you can do that thing where you wrap your thumb over, as you can see that I'm doing. If I can get in the camera here, barring the sixth string there with your thumb, or you can play it with your index and do a D shape with your other fingers here. Now, by D shape, I mean the same little triangular shape that you use to play the D major chord. You're just playing that up on this 4, 3, and 2 strings. Just like the diagram here. So whatever way you want to play is basically what I'm saying, but know this shape for this lesson. We're going to be moving it up the fretboard. So make sure you can move that 4 different places, pretty easy. So this is the basics of the resolve that now we want to understand. We got the grip. What is this resolve all about? So it's about this G. You may hear this more clearly in a progression that is where this is found all the time. And if you're learning jazz, you've heard 2-5-1. So here's 2. This will represent the 5. How did we get to that? How do we know that that represents the 5? That'll be in this lesson today. And then, so hear how there was some, a traveling bunch of chords there that kind of rang in well with each other. That's the basics of 2-5-1. There's that from the 5th of the scale, the G, built on the G of C major, going to C major. The 2 chord. Alright, so the 2-5-1. Resolving to C. But there's other ones, and there's a couple of other ways to resolve to this C major chord, or the 1 chord of whatever key you're doing, not just the 5 above the 1. But what I'm take away here is that it's always easy to find this 5 chord for whatever key you're in. So you can see here, the root is directly above the home chord of the key, the 1 chord of the key. So let's move it up here to E major. That's our 1 chord. So E, so what would our 5 chord there be? B to E. And so that'll work anywhere on the fretboard. So you can find your typical 5-to-1 resolution. Pretty easy, right? Okay, cool. So we've got that. The first thing we're going to do, number 1, let's change something up here. Let's take our root and move it up to the top here. So now we're going to play the chord like this, or just think about it for a couple seconds like this. Same as this. So, okay. Sounds like a dominant 7th chord, and you can play it on all kinds of places. Okay. What's the big deal here? Let's move on. Now what we're going to do is, for step number 2, let's tweak that root note a little bit down here. Also, what I'm showing you here is that the notes of the chord here, let's take that into account. F, B, D, and G. So our 7th, 3rd, 5th root. Way back here, by the way, where was it? Down here, we just something to look at here. The intervals, and that's what I'm showing here as well. So, root, 3rd, 5th, flat 7th root. That's what I was talking about a little earlier. And then you can see the intervals in between that are, not part of the chord. And then where the note names come from. So our root here today is G. So then our 3rd is going to be B, 5th D, 7th is F, and back to the G. So just something to see. Also, like if there's a little symmetry here, and we're missing a little symmetry. We have 3 notes in between the G and the B, then 2, then 2, then 1. So that puts us a little off kilter there, but that's okay. But just something to take note of. It'll come up later in the lesson. So, all right, so we have this, the interval names then, and the note names that we can see here. So the flat 7 is that's our flat 7 of our chord. Here's our root, flat 7, 3rd, 5th. We've moved the root up to the top, so G, D, B, F. All right, so that's understood. So what we're doing now is let's move it up a half step. So we're taking this note and we're moving it up on this shape here. Now let's see because we've done that, we've got F, B, D, A sharp, or the flat 7, the 3rd, the 5th, and the flat 2 or flatted 9 is a great way to think about it. But anyways, there's something. Well, I'll get to that next thing. But the first thing is we'll see what happens when it's with a symmetrical chord like this. Well, what symmetrical means is this. Now we have this, with all the spaced out correctly for the intervals here. So, all right, excuse me here. We got to do something there. All right. So we just something dumb just happened here. We just go back a sheet. Something happened. All right. So we're back here. So we got. All right. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go back to where we got some nonsense happening here. Excuse us for 1 second here. Alright, zoop. Alright, that should cure that. And we'll go back here. Sorry for the interruptions here. Back to the bump and grind. Our flat 2, our 2, our third, our fourth, regular 5, flatted 6, regular 6, which is now a double flatted 7, flat 7, and 7. It's operating as our 7, so we're going to call it a double flatted 7, even though it's actually the same as the 6. Okay, so listen here. The point is there's an even distribution here of every note, and that creates a symmetry here that repeats from every note, then therefore is what we call a flat third apart. And that's every note. So it creates a symmetrical bunch of chords, 4 different shapes here that are a different order of the same exact note. So what that means is, if you've already noticed that as the diminished pattern there that you hear in the old black and white tied to the Train Tracks movie soundtrack, suspense, whatever. That's what that is all about. So you got these 4 chords here. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the question then is, so there's 4 symmetrical chords. They're all a flat third apart. Are they related? Do they have the same notes? Yes, let's see that. So here we have the 4 notes. We have the intervals, and they're color coded. So we have the flat 2, the third, the fifth, the flat 7, and the flat 2. Now, if we were examining this as if we were moving our thinking into the exact nature of this chord, the spelling, or what is this chord and what is it called? We've moved that root, so now it's kind of different. So you would call this a diminished chord, and then there would be like different roots. The interval pattern would be different. I'll show you that on another sheet. I have it. If we skipped over it, then no big deal. But anyways, that's why we didn't need to do all that for what we're thinking today. I just need to show you the relationships so we could keep the intervals the same as they were with the chord we just left, the dominant chord. So we don't need to make the conversion. That's why you're seeing, in case you know your theory and you're banging your head at the screen right now, this is why I did that for the beginners. They don't need to make the conversion. It doesn't matter for what I'm basically all we need to kind of understand to get this really easy conclusion here coming up in about 4 more sheets. So as you can see here, we've got 4 color coded notes: the brown, blue, green, purple. We've got 1 of each in every shape, just jumbled around, but it's the same 4 notes: F, B, D, and A flat in every chord. All right, so that means that we have 4 quite strongly related chord shapes. They're all the same intervals and notes. So let's return to our jazz grip thinking. If we return that root back to where it was and play these as individual 7th chords, well, they're going to be all these randomly different root notes, but are they related? I mean, there's of the 4 notes of the chords, we'll have all these new different root notes, right? But all the 4 notes of the chord will be, of 3 of them will be jumbled around repeats of the same triad. So you're really just replacing the roots. So there's going to still be a strong relationship in these 5 chords, and you're going to instantly see, oh my gosh, where's this information been hiding all my life? This relationship is the explanation for what we talked about in the beginning of the video. The TriTone Sub, the Backdoor Dominant, the Secondary Dominant. Let's check it out. There's the secret sauce. And we can do that in 2 more sheets. So, I wonder where I had a conversion chart here, but, well, okay. Anyways, never mind that. So, back to this G7 jazz grip. So what we've done here is we've taken away that note that we slid up here, slid it back, and then put it back down on the bottom here. So we could think of G dominant 7 being related to the dominant 7th chord, a flat 3rd up. So that means if we're counting our G here is 1, 2, 3, 4, B flat, 1, 2, 3, 4, D flat, 1, 2, 3, 4, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, back to G. So, and you can hear there's still some of that suspended chord, or sorry, the suspense of the diminished chord happening, even though we're considering a B flat, our tonal gravity center. Best we can make it with just a guitar here, no bass, no keyboard. D flat, same 3 notes, and then an E root. E tonal gravity, same 3 notes. That's why they'll all work. Same chord. Hearing some like, which ones did Alan Holdsworth like? Alright, so we have these 4 dominant chords, all strongly related, and therefore useful for the same task of resolving to C major 7. So there's a great conclusion. If we were going back to our original, this 5 chord is our big deal for resolving to C in the scale. Not the 3, not the 2, not the 1, not the 6, the 5. It's going to be your strongest resolve to C. But what about that one? I hear resolve. There's the B flat. Resolve back home. I was far away, but now I'm home again. Right? So I bet that has a name. Let's find that out in a second here. Let's hear that D flat. Not as strong, but it's not out of the question. So that's pretty cool. Playing it close by there. So let's try that again here. I'm going to do this. And we can sort of hear a better version of resolve here. But what I'm going to do is because, we're going to C, and we're thinking here 2, 5, 1. So just a whole step up is that 2. C is the 1. D minor is the 2. So this chord here is right in between that C and D. It's D flat root. So we got this. You can just hear the everything's walking because you got this chromatic, falling chromatic line at the top there that people's ears really like, commonly known as a line cliche. Cool. So you can hear it right there. Now, where did that come from? What's new? Well, we know where it comes from, but now it's time to put some names on these things. Then we got this E right here. Let's try to hear this. Now, E is more commonly going to resolve to the relative minor of C. C's strongest relative on the other side of the scale is that A minor, the sixth chord. So or we could think something like have our purpose for our E there. So what do we got here? What do we got here? Final sheet reveals everything. So we have our regular 5-to-1. Dominant, you want your most natural, obvious 5-to-1 relationship. You're going to play your G dominant 7, and you're in the key of C, right? Your home chord is C major. So you have your G, your 5, C, D, E, F, G. Oh yeah, 5. Going to C. Right? But you could have B flat. The B flat is just below B flat, B, C. So you're walking up into C from the back, from behind. So it's kind of like a backdoor dominant resolution. You're approaching C from the back is how they were thinking about it when they gave it a quick coin. So there's a little bit of needed a little bit something in between that 2 chord to this substitute backdoor dominant to the, but could make it work. You could maybe even just do A minor. Kind of walked up there. Could do something with that, but anyways, there's your backdoor dominant walking up to that C or getting it back into home from behind with the B flat. All right, so the TriTone Sub. How does the TriTone Sub get its name? You've heard about this, and it's from this sequence of from this relationship basically. So the tritone now, because like how does that work musically? Someone could tell you what it is. Well, you take your 5, right? And you find it's tritone. So G, tritone is always on your fretboard. You should know this. Is always root. Whoopsie here. Root 2, flat 5, or this direction, flat 5. That is always, always, always the tritone direction. Kind of like a spine. Yeah, so know that as your tritone. So the TriTone Sub, so for a G and we're finding the tritone, it's here, C sharp or D flat, which we have in brown right here, the TriTone Sub. So it's right here. You can hear you've heard that before in certain settings. So you can even think for that 251 we talked about earlier. So yeah, pretty cool. The tritone sub, that's where that comes from. Basically, this note here is a this note. Kabam. It's a brown note. It's D flat. So it's your tritone sub. So it's pretty cool. Secondary dominant then is the last guy in line here. How did it get its name? It's that secondary dominant. There's a way that they will explain, well, it's the secondary of the blah blah blah. And yeah, you can think of it in that direction too. It's all good and makes a certain amount of sense. But you just realize it comes from here. But it's more like, to me, it's more about resolving to the other 251 in a major scale, which is to the minor chord, the relative minor, which is on the 6, which really means a 251. I was explaining this in another video. It irritates some people, but it's really like a 7, a half diminished chord, to a modified E dominant chord. Because in the key of C, it would normally be an E minor chord, but you can just change it out one note again to give it that dominant feel, and there's E has a relationship to the actual 5, so you get that 5, authentic 5-to-1 pull, but over to the minor chord. So anyways, yeah, there's all that. I hope you enjoyed. It's basically the summation of everything. You got your backdoor, all those weird dominants you heard of right here in one understanding. The backdoor dominant, the tritone sub, the secondary dominant. Where does it all come from? It all comes from right here. One of these kind of grips. You can move it. I sub this grip for the 5-string root grip. Very recent lessons tell you how to get to all them chords real quick if you're a beginner. So, all right, thanks. Let me know if you were somewhat of a beginner and you were able to go, hey, that kind of makes sense. So I really was able to take a big advanced concept and translate it to someone, just kind of learning this stuff. That would be really cool to know that I relayed the information like that. I guess like and subscribe and do all that stuff so we can keep on going here. I hope you enjoyed the lesson, and leave a comment so there can be some engagement. Thanks for watching again. Have a good one.